Hi there, today I'm going to be going through how you can integrate SMS notifications into your webinars. Before taking a look at this video, I recommend taking a look at these 3 blog posts and the videos within these blog posts so that you can see why Telnex should power your SMS marketing in Marketo, how you can use webhooks to make requests to the Telnex SMS API, and then how you can build two-way SMS in Marketo using Telnex and Zapier. So take a look at these 3 prerequisites first, and then once you've done that, you're ready to dive on into this video. So the first thing I'm going to cover is SMS opt-in compliance standards. If you are going to be sending webinar SMS notifications, you need to let people know that message and data rates may apply, let them know about message frequency, let them know they should send help for help or stop to cancel, and then link to your privacy policy. So on this example page here, you can see that I've done that. I've said message and data rates may apply. One message will be sent upon registration and another the day of the webinar. And then we've got text help for help or text stop to cancel. And then on the footer of this page, we've got a link to our privacy policy. So bear this in mind when you're designing your webinar registration form. And now we know what the form looks like on the front end. Let's dive into Marketo to see how we've set this form up on the back end. Okay, so now we're within the webinar program in Marketo. I'm going to open up the webinar registration form, and sorry that my head is blocking it a bit. Now there are 3 important things I want to go over in this form. The first of which is the visibility rule that we've got on the phone number field here. You'll notice that the phone number will only become visible on this form when we check this checkbox, because obviously we don't want the user to have to go through all the effort of entering their phone number if they're not going to receive SMS. So the way we set up this visibility rule in Marketo is by clicking on, I'll zoom in for you guys a bit, is by clicking on visibility rules here on the right hand side, and then show the phone number field if I want SMS reminders. The previous checkbox is yes, and then give the field label. So that's how we set up the visibility for this field, so that when we check this checkbox up here, that this phone number field will be displayed. Another thing I recommend doing is having a separate phone number field for these webinar SMS notifications and a separate phone number that your sales team can use. So when someone fills out this form and they give us this phone number, they are allowing us to use that phone number to send them SMS notifications for this webinar. So our sales team should not be able to call them from this number, because that would be a violation of the reason why they gave us this phone number. So I highly recommend having a separate field for these SMS notifications for the webinar, and then keeping that separate from the field that your sales team uses to make their phone calls. Now, the way that we track whether someone has opted in to receive webinar SMS notifications is that this checkbox links to a subscription field specific to webinar SMS notifications. So here I've called this subscription field Tech Subscription Webinar. You could also call it SMS Subscription Webinar. So we know that whenever anyone has this field equal to true, that we are allowed to send them SMS notifications. And I'll show you how we use the value of this field later on in a smart list to decide who we can send SMS messages to. And then the final thing I recommend with this form is make sure that your front end development team put a validation in place on this field so that it only accepts numbers in E164 format. You can read more about E164 format just by Googling it, but it's basically you have to include the plus sign, then the international country code, and then you have to put in the rest of the phone number. So the input phone numbers to this form must all be in E164 format in order for the API requests to send the SMS messages to work successfully. And when I was rolling this out for the first time, the biggest headache I had was people not entering phone numbers in this format. And then when we went to send them SMS, the SMS messages would obviously fail because the numbers weren't in the right format. So I highly recommend talking to your front-end development team to put a validation rule in place on this field so that numbers can only be entered in E164 format. If you've got some front-end developer help, what you could do to make the phone numbers easier for people to enter in the E164 format is to have a country drop-down field like this, where the person selects their country, and then when they select their country, their international country extension code is automatically entered. So for me, I'm in the US, I just enter my phone number. And then what happens on the back end, and you'll need front-end developer help for this, is that these two fields get joined together and they get stored in the form marketing phone, which is a hidden field. So same as before, we've got visibility rules enabled on these two fields. Only show this country field if the I want to receive SMS webinar checkbox is yes. And then we put in the field label and all the values that someone can select. And then we do the same with this field. We have visibility rules where we only show this field and we show the label when I want to receive SMS reminders is true. So that is what causes these fields to only show when the checkbox is checked. And then, as I mentioned, when these fields are filled out, you'll need some front-end developer help to ensure that these two values are joined together so that the country extension code, e.g. +1, is joined together with the rest of the phone number. And then have them be pushed into this hidden form marketing phone field. So that's one way you can make it easier for people to enter their phone numbers in the correct format. So have a talk to your front-end developer if you want to implement this. If you have collected phone numbers in the past and you didn't have a validation rule in place on your forms to put the phone numbers in E164 format, you can check out the link I provide in this blog post, where I give you recommendations on what you can do to clean up those old phone numbers so that they will be in the correct E164 format moving forward, so you can send SMS notifications to these people. So check out that blog post. So the next thing we are going to go through is how we can send a confirmation SMS when someone first registers for your webinar. As I explained in this Marketo text messaging with the Telnex SMS API post, the webhook we create makes reference to the campaign description. So the body of the SMS message that we send to people when they register, we get that from the Smart Campaign description, and I'll show you what that looks like in a minute. I highly recommend taking a look at this blog post, or if you even need a refresher about webhooks in Marketo, you can check out this Marketo webhook guide with examples. The advantage of using the campaign description token in this webhook means that we can have one webhook being called by many different smart campaigns, and we can send many different text messages using the same webhook and change the body in each text message using the campaign description token. So we can have one smart campaign where the description is hello, and we can have another smart campaign where the description is goodbye, and they can both request this same webhook but send different SMS messages. One will say hello and one will say goodbye. So this way we get away with having one webhook as opposed to having a different webhook every time for each message we want to send. So that's the advantage of using the campaign description token. And let me jump here into the webinar program to show you what this looks like. So we've just got a smart list here to say someone fills out the form and then we choose the form name. So whatever, in this case, it's going to be F0 webinar registration in this webinar. So this is the form that people fill out. This is our trigger. And then in the flow here, we make a request to that webhook and we say if they're a member of the send text criteria smart list, which I'll go through in a second, If they're a member of this list, then we are going to call the Telnex send SMS form phone. And as I show here, this is what the payload of the webhook looks like. It pulls in the campaign description as the SMS message body. And here is the text that will actually be sent to the person because it's the campaign description. And it's important to note here that these inverted commas are important in order for the SMS to be able to send. When you're making API requests using webhooks, it's very important that you be very careful with things like this. So just bear that in mind when you're setting this up. The inverted commas here in the Smart Campaign description are important, and follow the exact same setup and structure that I have here. So now let's take a look at the send SMS criteria smart list that I mentioned before. So you'll notice that before we send the text message here, we check to see if the person's in the send text criteria smart list. And in this smart list, we first of all check that someone's not in the exclude competitors smart list. And this can just be something that says the person's email address, domain must not contain one of the domains from our competitors, or the person's company name must not contain one of the company names from our competitors. So you can build this exclusion list to exclude your competitors from receiving SMS notifications. Then remember how I said that this checkbox here is linked to the text subscription webinar field. So we check to make sure that is true. And then the final part of this, we make sure that their form marketing phone, which is mapped to this field, is not empty. So if they pass these criteria, we will then send them an SMS notification once they fill out the form to register for the webinar. Okay, now let's take a look at how we can send a reminder SMS on the day of the webinar to remind people to attend. So as I mentioned here in the blog post, one of the quirks of Marketo webhooks is that they can only be called from trigger-based smart campaigns. And this causes a bit of an issue with our send reminder smart campaign because it's a batch campaign. So if someone's a member of the program and they've registered for the webinar, we schedule this batch campaign to run an hour ahead of the webinar or 10 minutes ahead of the webinar to send the SMS message. But since it's a batch campaign and not a trigger campaign, this means that we can't call the send SMS webhook directly from the flow of this smart campaign. So what we have to do instead is be a little bit creative. So in this case, if we see they're a member of the send text criteria smart list, we request this send SMS reminder day of campaign. And we also send them an email to let them know, hey, the webinar is about to start, but we're focusing on the SMS requestable campaign here. And the way this works is, this is a campaign as requested trigger campaign. So since this is a trigger campaign, it is now able to make webhook requests in the flow. So here we can call the Telnex send SMS webhook. So this name is incorrect at the moment. It should be Telnex send SMS form phone. So since this is a trigger-based campaign, we can make the request to the webhook here in the flow. So that means that when this batch campaign runs 10 minutes ahead of the webinar starting, it makes a request to this requestable trigger campaign. And it's this campaign that actually sends out the SMS message. And as I mentioned before, it takes the SMS body from the campaign description. So we'll see here that this is the message that will be sent to the people 10 minutes or 15 minutes ahead of the webinar. And you'll notice here that it includes the unique join link for this person to join the webinar. In the final part of this video, I'm going to walk through how we can set up alerting for when our send SMS webhook fails. And as I mentioned here, the most likely reason for this is that the registrant entered their phone number incorrectly and they didn't follow the E164 format that I mentioned earlier on. So whenever this happens, we're going to create an email alert so that we can manually review the phone number that the person entered and then correct it and then resend them the SMS text message that they missed. I say here that you can automatically unsubscribe these people from SMS notifications in the event that the SMS attempt to them failed. If you have form validation rules in place, then it might be worth implementing some automation to say if text message fails, then unsubscribe them from webinar SMS. However, if you don't have form validation rules in place, or you know that those validation rules aren't bulletproof, then I wouldn't recommend automating, or I wouldn't recommend automatically unsubscribing people from webinar SMS. I'd recommend doing a manual review of the person and checking the phone number they entered. And if there's any other fields that can indicate what country they're in, like a country field in your database, see what country they're in and then see does the international extension match the country the person is in. And that will help you figure out if the person entered their phone number format correctly. And if you see the number is in the correct format and the number is a dud, then you can manually unsubscribe this person from receiving further. You can manually unsubscribe this person from receiving further SMS from the webinars. So the first thing to notice is we've got an alert set up in Marketo. So this is just a very simple email where we use the SP alert token. So check the activity log using the link name below to see the details of the failed webhook. So we just use the SP send alert info token here. And what this looks like when it actually gets sent for a lead is like this. It gives you a link to the lead that you can open up in Marketo and also in Salesforce. So this is what it looks like. You can then go to the person's record. You can check their country field. You can check their phone number field. You can check their activity log. And then once you hopefully figure out what their correct number is, we can then later on send them the SMS that they missed. So I'll first show you what the Alert Smart campaign looks like. So here, it's called Webhook Failover. We see the webhook is called, and again, this should be Telnex send SMS form phone. So when this webhook fails, that is the error type is not successful, then we are going to send this alert to my email address so I can manually review the lead and hopefully fix their phone number. So once I've corrected the person's phone number, I will then go to the backdate registration SMS Smart campaign. And then in here, I put in the person's email address or multiple email addresses of all the people I need to resend the registration SMS to. And then in the flow, we simply request the send registration SMS requestable campaign that I went through earlier on. So in this case, we say, Telnex here, thanks for opting into Telnex webinar reminders, text stop to unsubscribe and help for message and data rates may apply. So once again, since this was a batch campaign, we cannot make the request to the send SMS form phone webhook directly here in the flow. We have to make a request to this campaign. And then since this is a trigger campaign, it is then able to make the webhook request to the Telnex send SMS form phone. And there you have it. That's how you can set up webinar SMS notifications in your webinars in Marketo using webhooks and the Telnex SMS API. If you want some follow-up reading, and this has whet your appetite, then you can take a look at these blog posts here on how to enrich your Marketo leads using number lookup information, how to forward an SMS to Slack, email, and another number, and how to send SMS in bulk using numbers stored in a Google Sheet. So I hope you found this video interesting. If you have any questions, then please ask them in the YouTube comments, and I'll put a link to this blog post in the YouTube description, so you can follow that link to get to this blog post here and see everything that I've gone through. Have a great day.